Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. Today, we will be talking about machine identities. So, just like human identities are usually verified using usernames and passwords, machines, on the other hand, they have their unique identity, a sort of a digital credential that involves cryptographic keys and digital certificates. And these are used to establish trust or authenticate other machines who are trying to connect with them and encrypt communication, just to maintain data confidentiality between the connected devices. Now, most organizations are making a common mistake today when it comes to managing identities. They are entirely neglecting machine and non human identities and concentrating primarily on human identities. Machine identities are increasing at such an exponential rate, and in fact, today they are outnumbering human identities due to digital transformation, computing, work from anywhere trends, and whenever something causes such an explosion, there are obviously bound to be some challenges that are associated with it. So, we'll explore them a little, and finally, we'll talk about how the purpose of establishing zero trust is entirely defeated when machine identities are ignored. So, while I was researching about machine identities and I was reading up a little bit, I came across this report by Cisco that said that the number of networked devices is expected to reach whopping 29.3 billion by the year 2023 compared to 18.4 billion devices in 2018. So this means that there will be an increase of more than 10 billion new devices in a span of 5 years. So machine identities are definitely outnumbering human identities at almost twice the rate. But digital transformation is obviously the major driving force in this scenario. And over the past few years, many organizations have undergone rapid digital transformation. And with the onset of pandemic, we have been moving to work from anywhere and hybrid working trends. And all of this has cumulatively contributed to the increase in the number of machines and applications that are required for the smooth operations or to ensure that the business is running seamlessly. Another very important reason for this increase is the shortening of the lifespan of machine identities and certificates over the past few years. Now, earlier, like pretty early, the average lifespan of machine identities used to be somewhere around 5 years. And then a little later, it was brought down to 27 months. And then finally, somewhere around September 2020, it was further shortened to 1 year. So the life cycle of a machine identity is actually getting cut in half. It means that you have to manage roughly around twice the number of identities in the same period. This will definitely lead to a massive surge in the number of machine identities that needs to be issued for proper functioning of systems. Now, circling back to digital transformation, cloud adoption and virtualization have also contributed to this rapid increase in the number of machine identities because these technologies use a lot of microservices, service meshes, APIs, and while the lifespan of these physical machine is around 3 to 5 years, the lifespan of these virtual machines is just around 20 days. So just imagine the number of cloud machine identities that have to be reissued, installed, decommissioned, and managed at that rate. Besides this, we are also experiencing an explosion in the number of mobile devices, IoT devices, smart machines, Alexas, bots, and whatnot. So all of this cumulatively have generated this rapid surge in machine identities, and we are definitely at a stage where managing all of it has become very challenging. Mismanagement of machine identities have actually posed serious impact on the organization's overall security posture in the past. In fact, the much talked about SolarWinds attack is a very important example for this, because in this attack, digital certificates played a very major role when the attacker breached the software supply chain. And a lot of other attacks can actually be linked to mismanagement of machine identities, expired digital certificates, and compromised certificates. But why are machine identities so difficult to manage? What causes these vulnerabilities and data breaches? So obviously, when there is such a surge, there is a rapid rise in the number of machine identities. It's very difficult to manage them when we do not have proper visibility over them. So due to the massive number of machine identities, it's extremely difficult to keep track of each and every key and certificate. And guess what? Organizations do not even possess the accurate and up to date inventories of their machine identities, and they do not have a proper understanding of how exactly their machine identities are used, and where they are used, and how they're managed. And this overall lack of visibility over the number of certificates and keys, their expiration periods, their validities, and even if they are compliant or not, has led to a lot of security breaches in the past. Now, since machine identities are generally associated with privileged accounts, limited visibility over these certificates and keys expose your organization to security breaches. And without the proper knowledge about the number or the nature of the machine identities that are residing in your environment, it's fairly easy for an expired certificate to go unnoticed and lead to a security outage. In fact, in 2020, Microsoft Teams suffered such a security outage, which was caused due to an expired certificate. But besides the certificates that reside within the organization's network, there are certificates that reside on the network perimeter, such as edge and IoT devices. And generally, these devices are very difficult to detect and track, and they often escape auditing. Now, ideally, the machine identity lifecycle is supposed to be automated with self-service options, and it'll help us have a secure and reliable machine identity management system that sticks to compliance policies. However, that is definitely not the reality. Most organizations do not even have a consistent framework for governing the machine identity lifecycle. There is lack of ownership, there is lack of control, and since the certificates and keys are used by various teams across the organizations, different teams have different goals, they have different skill set. So ultimately, there is no one to determine how the machine identities should be secured or how they should be managed. Since there is no centralized or consistent policy to determine how certificates are issued or who can access them, or other such important practices, these machine identities are left untracked, they're left unmonitored, and they eventually lead to a security incident. But without automation, it's very complex to manage these certificates and keys, since there are honestly very few administrators who are properly skilled at managing machine identities, and this general lack of expertise results in mismanagement, and they cause security breaches, and they cause security cyber attacks. Now, as we just discussed, without automation, the process of managing certificates and keys is highly disorganized, they're prone to error, and obviously very inefficient. But manual tracking and management would have been efficient a few years ago, but now, due to the huge volume of machine identities which needs to be updated very often, this cannot be handled manually. In fact, manual tracking and management is not just highly prone to errors, they are very time consuming at the same time, and there is a very serious chance of certificates going unnoticed and later on leading to a security event. Similarly, manually issuing certificates or revoking or renewing or auditing, all of this can result in downtimes and outages and overall impact the organization's productivity. Now, we know that regulatory compliance is very critical to any kind of organization, but it is equally difficult to achieve. To ensure compliance, we need to first implement appropriate certificate policies that will, ensure the proper issuing of certificates, their validity, their trust levels, their access privileges, and all such important factors. Therefore, it is very important to have a centralized policy management system in place. Centralized policies can prevent any security incident. They can prevent possible breaches, since we'll be continuously auditing these machine identities to ensure that they are compliant. But this whole process becomes extremely difficult to achieve due to lack of visibility and the huge volume of machine identities. For cybersecurity today, the new boundary is set around identity with the machine and the individual behind it serving as the new perimeter. Hybrid and work from anywhere models have become a reality, and by now organizations have accepted that zero trust architecture is a fundamental security requirement. And as we all know by now, the underlying principle of zero trust is to never trust, always verify. And this principle makes this security architecture the best suited infrastructure or architecture to protect organizational networks in the current cybersecurity landscape. Now, we have been reiterating the importance of zero trust for over 10 years now, for over a decade. And all of us are familiar with the basic principles of zero trust, but let's take a quick recap. In a zero trust approach, we eliminate the idea that trust is binary, and we believe that attackers can be present both inside and outside the network perimeter. Therefore, every access request that is being made has to be granted only on the basis of least privilege access. Now, by employing the policy of least privilege, each user is granted access only to the data and resources that are absolutely essential for carrying out a specific task. This ensures that all access control and security decisions are granular, and we can prevent exposure of sensitive data or business critical data to the vulnerable parts of a network. So we've already established that in the current state, in the current situation, zero trust is the fundamental security requirement. But now we come to the most crucial part: why a strong machine identity management strategy is necessary to achieve zero trust. Like we discussed earlier, there's been a massive explosion in the number of machine identities, and these don't just include physical devices anymore. They are, there are IoT devices, there are APIs, there are microservices, there are bots, and there are smart machines. And while enforcing a zero trust approach, only human identities have been considered for this long. This leaves cryptographic keys, digital certificates, and PKIs neglected and mismanaged, and this makes it a perfect opportunity for attackers to gain access into a network and cause security breaches. Now, without proper visibility, without proper management and policies for machine identities, a zero trust architecture fails. The integration of machine identity management with zero trust is absolutely necessary at this point to manage and secure all cryptographic assets and achieve crypto agility. So it's time. Therefore, the integration of machine identity management with zero trust is absolutely necessary at this point in time to manage and secure all cryptographic assets and to achieve crypto agility. It's time to extend zero trust principles to all cryptographic sets and digital certificates and keep the network safe from such attacks. So, before we look into how zero trust and machine identity management can be integrated with each other, let's take a look at how a zero trust strategy would look without machine identity management. Basically, the results will be the same as the challenges that we face without a proper machine identity management strategy: lack of visibility, expired certificates, compromised machine identities, mismanagement of cryptographic keys, digital certificates, PKIs. So we have managed to gather enough evidence now to prove that zero trust and machine identity management go hand in hand. So let's see how we can extend zero trust to machine identities and bridge the gap. So we discussed previously how lack of visibility over our machine identities can have disastrous effects on the organization's overall security. So the first and most important step towards extending zero trust to machine identities is to gain visibility over all the keys and certificates in our environment. And the only way to do this is to have a thorough scanning process in place, which will bring every key and every certificate to attention. But this scanning should not only aim to expose machine identities within the network, but also the identities of devices outside the network, such as edge IoT devices and certain certificates that are buried deep within the network. And to ensure all of this, we have to gain deep visibility into details such as the certificate's location, CA, validity date, and many such other factors. And this will eventually help us prevent attacks that originate from expired or malicious certificates. Now, once we have obtained proper visibility over our machine identities, it's time that we centralize the whole process. So, centralizing the management of machine identities will help us streamline policy implementation across different devices, workloads, and environments. And we can also group various certificates based on their type, their expiry dates, their criticality, their validity, and other such important attributes, and then implement group policies accordingly. So, by centralizing the whole policy management system, we can also ensure that these machine identities are properly secured there and they can effectively prevent any illegal access to the network. And the challenges that we used to face due to distribution of responsibilities will also be taken care of. Now, once we have centralized the whole system, automation will be another very important factor that will help us achieve a successful machine identity management program. Automating the machine identity management lifecycle will help us ensure that the certificates and keys are up to date, and they will help us reduce security outages in the future. Policy management, rotation of keys, then provisioning or revoking keys. These are some of the processes that we can automate to ensure or enforce tighter security controls. This will overall enhance the speed, the efficiency, and also reduce human errors, which was like a very prime problem in manual management of machine identities. And another very important advantage that automation gives us is that it helps us achieve cryptographic agility. So, just having visibility over our machine identities is not enough. Continuously monitoring and auditing all of these identities, these certificates, and keys are equally important, because auditing will help you find and remove vulnerabilities in your network, such as weak passwords, unused keys, or malicious certificates or expired certificates. We have to constantly look to improve our machine identity management strategy. And this process, this auditing process, can entirely be automated by using third party tools. So we should definitely audit these machine identities and continuously monitor them, because this is a really important aspect in enforcing a zero trust architecture. Rotating SSH keys on a regular basis is very critical. So this actually helps you to maintain remote access securely, and helps us prevent vulnerabilities that originate from former employees who probably have access to old keys or old algorithms, and maybe unintentionally or intentionally they might make changes to the policies and then disrupt the organization's security infrastructure. So once we have centralized this whole process, it's important that we redefine the storage of these machine identities. We need to segment them and properly ensure that the critical or the business sensitive keys and certificates are not exposed to the vulnerable parts of the network, and that they are properly secured. So redefining your storage will help you overall have better visibility and manage your machine identities. Now that we have a basic idea of how to bridge the gap between zero trust and machine identity management, we'll explore two very important aspects in detail: visibility and automation. We've already established why gaining visibility over the machine identities in your environment is crucial, and what are the challenges that organizations face with limited visibility. Now, let's see what we can do to gain visibility and collect enough intelligence about these machine identities that reside in our environment. So, the first step for implementing a successful machine identity management program is to keep an inventory of all the machine identities in your organization. Now, to do this, we need different types of visibility, since these machine identities are highly dynamic in nature. So to ensure that, we'll require having a comprehensive and up-to-date view of all the machine identities in the organization, including those on virtual or cloud or mobile or part of other IoT infrastructures. Now, maintaining a central repository of these machine identities will help us implement a proper machine identity management solution, and will help us facilitate centralized access. And while we are trying to derive some comprehensive analysis out of it, having the data right in front of us, all the data right in front of us, will eventually help us in making such security decisions. Now, as much as it's important to discover these machine identities, maintain the central repository, it's also important that we educate or equip our security analysts and other stakeholders with the necessary information in order to identify machine identity anomalies and detect any other vulnerabilities by exploiting analytics tool. This will help us prevent attacks and security breaches, or find out vulnerabilities, find out deviations from baseline patterns, and have an incident response plan in place. Now, once we have gained visibility over the machine identities in our environment, we need to collect information on crucial attributes related to these machine identities. This will actually help us enforce the machine identity policies, and also detect anomalies when something's wrong. So these attributes mostly are machine identity type, the key length and key strength of the certificate, cryptographic algorithms, hash algorithms, the lifespan of the key certificates, the validity of it, and certificate authority. Besides these critical machine identity attributes, we will also need some additional intelligence other than what we can just retrieve from keys and certificates. such as location information about the keys, who are the owners of every system that uses these certificates issued by a particular CA. So when there is a security breach or security vulnerability, they can be immediately notified. And other attributes such as the protocol version, the life cycle, the configuration, and all of this will actually help us having the incident response plan in place. Basically, the greater or the higher the amount of intelligence we have on these machine identity attributes, the better will be the incident response. But most problems that are faced by organizations while managing machine identities are mainly due to manual tracking, because since they're very highly prone to errors, or they're very time consuming, and ultimately all of this results in outages and downtime. So it is understandable that the incident response time is comparatively much lower when the machine identity lifecycle is managed by human. So let's take a look at the different ways in which we can automate machine identity management. It's, as we discussed earlier, it's very complicated to track and manage huge volume of machine identities that are spread out across multiple systems. And generally, in manual tracking, administrators have direct access to private keys, and this might lead to private key compromise. Also, moreover, to install a new certificate, the admin has to follow around 6 to 7 steps or even more, which is very time consuming and prone to errors. And this whole process can be just simplified by automating your entire machine identity lifecycle. Now, automating policy enforcement is also a very great way to ensure regulatory compliance and to make sure that the results are consistent throughout the environment. So this provides us some sort of flexibility, and it also helps us enforce certain policies to a specific group. And basically, for group policy management, it's really, by now we know that continuous monitoring is critical while we extend zero trust to machine identities. It's a given. So automating the monitoring portion is the only way to ensure that our machine identities are not compromised, and we are able to generate real-time alerts when any anomalies or deviation from baseline patterns are detected. Additionally, if we can also automate the response to critical security events like a CA compromise or zero-day vulnerabilities, I mean, nothing can be better than that. This will actually help us accelerate or increase our speed of response, and it'll give us considerable advantages when compared to manually validating these machine identities. Once you have deployed the tools and processes for gathering information and automating machine identity management, the final step is to just integrate all of these machine identities with existing IT systems in your environment, and then you're good to go. So the number of machine identities is only bound to increase in the future with cloud computing and the pandemic. The boundaries that were in place for a retail office work setting are definitely long gone, and through the introduction of a hybrid of this hybrid work model, I think it's impossible to go back to how things were. So it's high time that we have a proper machine identity management strategy in place to prevent security events caused by mismanaged machine identities. All this time, as security professionals, we've lacked a common ground or a common language to talk about machine identity threats. I hope today's webinar has helped you get the much needed insight into an industry standard way to communicate about such attacks, about the new malware, about the hackers that are using these machine identities, and how we can defend ourselves against them with machine identity management and zero trust. You've all been a wonderful audience. And again, thanks for joining today's webinar. If you have any queries, or if you want to, hit me up and talk about machine identity management or anything related to IAM, IT security, we can definitely have, a call. We can go on a call and discuss. Please write to me at debs@manageengine.com. My email ID is shown on the screen. Thank you guys and have a very good day.